The massive crystalline chambers of the Stellar Council echoed with heated debate as representatives from dozens of species argued over trade routes and territorial disputes. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat quietly at the human delegation table, her weathered hands folded as she listened to the same circular arguments that had been going on for 3 standard cycles. The Zephyrians were complaining about mining rights again. Their blue-skinned leader, High Consul Vextar, waved his forearms dramatically as he spoke through the universal translator. The humans continue to exceed their allocated quotas in the Kepler belt. This flagrant disregard for our agreements cannot stand. Elder Throck of the Stoneheart Collective rumbled his agreement, his rocky exterior shifting as he spoke. Agreed. The humans show no respect for established protocols. They mine where they please and trade with whoever offers the best price. Elena finally stood, her simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the ornate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other delegates. The chamber fell silent as she approached the speaking platform. After 40 years of human membership in the council, everyone knew that when Ambassador Vasquez spoke, it was worth hearing. Honored delegates, she began, her voice calm and measured. We have been members of this council for 4 decades. In that time, we have contributed more resources, more technological innovations, and more humanitarian aid than any 3 species combined. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Aquarian delegate's gills fluttered nervously while the insectoid hive-mind representative clicked disapprovingly. Yet every session, we face the same accusations. We mine too much. We trade too freely. We explore too aggressively. We help too many species outside the Council's influence. Elena's tone remained steady, but those who knew her could detect the underlying steel. Tell me, when the Corlan plague threatened to wipe out 60% of known sentient life, who provided the cure, free of charge? The humans did, came a reluctant whisper from the Corlan representative, whose species owed their very existence to human medical intervention. When the Void Hunters attacked the Outer Rim colonies, who sent their fleets to defend worlds they had never even visited, Elena continued. The humans, admitted the Tauri delegate, whose homeworld had been saved by human intervention. And when half the council voted to let the Epsilon sector fall to corporate exploitation, who established free trade zones and protection agreements? The chamber was silent now. Everyone knew the answer. Elena took a deep breath and made the announcement that would change galactic politics forever. The United Earth government has made a decision. After careful consideration, we are withdrawing from the Stellar Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other in dozens of languages, while the translation systems struggled to keep up. High Consul Vextar's blue skin turned a deep purple with rage. You cannot simply leave, he shrieked. We'll all be honored according to their individual terms, Elena replied calmly. We are not abandoning our allies or breaking our word. We are simply removing ourselves from this bureaucratic nightmare that has forgotten its purpose. Elder Throck's massive form shifted forward. You think you can survive without the Council's protection? Without our trade networks? Elena smiled then, and it was not a pleasant expression. Elder Throck, with respect, we have been carrying this council for decades. Our protection has been keeping half these worlds safe. Our trade has been keeping your economies stable. Our technology has been solving your problems. The Aquarian delegate finally found her voice, her translator converting her wet gurgles into words. But what about the greater good? The unity of species? The shared future we have all worked toward? What unity? Elena asked, gesturing toward the chaos around them. This council has spent more time arguing about human success than celebrating galactic progress. We have wasted more resources on bureaucratic procedure than we have spent on actual cooperation. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Humanity came to the stars, seeking partnership, knowledge, and friendship. We found species obsessed with limiting our growth instead of growing together. You fear our ambition instead of being inspired by it. You resent our success instead of learning from it. The chamber had grown quiet again. the weight of her words settling over the assembled delegates like a heavy blanket. "So we are leaving," Elena continued. "Not in anger, but in disappointment. We will continue to trade with those who wish to trade fairly. We will continue to defend those who request our aid. We will continue to explore, to innovate, and to grow. But we will do it on our terms, not under the restrictions of a council that has forgotten why it was formed." High Consul Vextar's voice cracked with desperation. "You cannot do this. The economic impact alone will destabilize half the galaxy." "Then perhaps," Elena said quietly, "you should have thought of that before you tried to limit our growth at every turn." She gathered her materials and walked toward the exit, her small human delegation following behind her. At the doorway, she turned back one final time. "The invitation remains open," she said. "Any species that wishes to join us in true partnership, free exploration, and mutual growth is welcome. But we will no longer pretend that this council represents those values." As the human delegation left the chamber, the remaining delegates sat in stunned silence. The greatest contributors to galactic civilization had just walked away, and no one quite knew what came next. In her private quarters aboard the human diplomatic vessel, Elena sent a single encrypted message back to Earth. "The divorce is final. Time to show them what humanity can really accomplish." The response came back within hours. "Understood. Operation New Horizon is approved. Let's remind the galaxy why they needed us in the first place." As the human ships departed Council space, they left behind a political structure that had grown complacent and bureaucratic. What they were heading toward was something entirely new. A future where human potential was not limited by the fears and jealousies of others. The Stellar Council watched them go, not yet understanding that they had just made the greatest strategic error in galactic history. They had forced humanity to become their competitor instead of their partner, and humanity had never lost a competition that truly mattered. 2 years had passed since humanity's dramatic departure from the Stellar Council, and the galaxy was beginning to understand what they had lost. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, humanity's newest exploration vessel, as it approached the Andromeda Gate. A massive space station that had become the symbol of human independence. What had started as a simple trading post had evolved into something unprecedented. A truly free galactic marketplace, where any species could trade, research, and cooperate without bureaucratic interference. "Captain, we're receiving docking requests from 47 different vessels," reported Lieutenant Martinez from the communications station, "including 3 ships that just defected from Council space yesterday." Sarah nodded, watching the view screen as ships from dozens of species lined up to dock at human facilities. The Andromeda Gate was now busier than the old Council's primary trade hub had ever been. "Any word from the Corland Science Expedition?" "Really? Yes, ma'am. Dr. Melkon reports they've made a breakthrough in quantum communications. They're requesting permission to share the technology with our research teams." This was the new reality. Species that had been bound by Council regulations were now flocking to human space, eager to participate in true scientific and economic cooperation. The humans had created something the Council never could. A system based on merit and mutual benefit, rather than political maneuvering. Meanwhile, in the Stellar Council chambers, the situation was becoming desperate. High Consul Vextar paced frantically as reports flooded in about the latest defections. The Tauri had officially withdrawn from the Council 3 months ago. The Corland research fleets had redirected to human space. Even the traditionally loyal Crystalline Confederacy was questioning their continued membership. "The economic data is catastrophic," reported Councillor Yith, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. "Trade volume is down 60%. Our research output has dropped to pre-contact levels. Half our member species are behind on their council fees." Elder Throck's rocky exterior seemed to have lost some of its shine. "How many requests for exploratory dialogue with human representatives have we received this week?" 17, came the reluctant answer, "including 3 from our own security committee members." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Humanity had not just left the Council. They had created a superior alternative. The Human Cooperative, as they called their new organization, operated on principles that made the old Council seem archaic and inefficient. Any species could join simply by agreeing to 3 basic principles: no aggressive expansion against unwilling neighbors, no restriction of scientific research for political purposes, and no trade barriers based on species or political affiliation. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, humanity's chief diplomat for the cooperative, was conducting another recruitment meeting aboard the mobile research station Newton's Dream. This time, her guests were a delegation from the Spiral Confederation, a group of species that had been council members for over 2 centuries. "I must admit," said Ambassador Kreldos, his scaled features reflecting curiosity rather than suspicion, "your achievements in such a short time are remarkable. The Andromeda Gate processes more trade in a month than our home sector sees in a year." Elizabeth smiled warmly. "That's what happens when you remove artificial barriers and trust species to do what benefits everyone. Your people are natural innovators. I've read your research on gravitational manipulation. Imagine what you could accomplish with access to human quantum computing and Corlin Biosciences." Corlin Biosciences. The ambassador's companions exchanged glances. The offer was tempting. Perhaps too tempting. "What about security?" asked General Vexani, the military representative. "Protection from what?" Elizabeth asked gently. The last major threat to galactic security were the Void Hunters, and humanity dealt with them while the Council was still debating whether intervention was appropriate. As for pirates and raiders, our cooperative security forces have eliminated 90% of them in the territories we patrol. She activated a holographic display showing crime statistics, trade routes, and security data. Our members don't pay taxes to a central authority. Instead, they contribute resources based on their ability and needs. The result is better protection at a fraction of the cost. The delegation was clearly impressed, but Ambassador Kreldos raised the question everyone was thinking. What happens to those who remain in the Council? Are they to be shut out of this prosperity? Elizabeth's expression grew serious. "We have no desire for conflict or exclusion. Any Council member, or the Council itself, is welcome to join the cooperative. But we will not compromise our principles to accommodate their bureaucratic preferences." Back in Council space, the economic pressure was becoming unbearable. Shipping companies were routing around Council territories to reach human trade networks. Scientific research was stagnating as their best minds emigrated to cooperative space. Even worse, the younger generations of Council species were openly questioning why their governments remained tied to such an obviously failing system. High Consul Vextar found himself in the unprecedented position of having to justify the Council's existence to his own people. In an emergency session broadcast across Zephyrian space, he tried to rally support for their continued membership. "The humans offer short-term gains," he declared, his blue skin flushing with passion. "But at what cost? Do we abandon millions of years of careful political development for the promise of quick profits?" The response from his own people was devastating. Citizens called in to ask why their government was preventing them from accessing better trade opportunities, superior medical care, and advanced education systems. Young Zephyrians were already working in human space, sending home credits and technologies that far exceeded anything the Council could provide. The breaking point came when the Hivemind Collective, one of the Council's founding members, announced their withdrawal. Their Queen Entity's statement was brief but crushing. "The collective has determined that continued Council membership is detrimental to our species' development. We are joining the Human Cooperative, effective immediately." The message was clear. If a founding member could reach such a conclusion, what hope did the Council have? In her private office aboard the research vessel Curiosity, Elena Vasquez reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The woman who had walked away from the council 2 years ago was now watching that same organization crumble under the weight of its own inefficiency. "Admiral," her aide announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Council Space. It's marked as official, diplomatic correspondence." Elena accepted the transmission, unsurprised to see High Consul Vextar's image appear on her screen. The once proud leader looked haggard, his usual arrogance replaced by desperate worry. "Ambassador Vasquez," he began formally, "I am authorized by the Council Emergency Committee to open negotiations regarding a possible reconciliation between our organizations." Elena leaned back in her chair, studying the man who had once dismissed human contributions as insignificant. "I'm listening, High Consul. The Council is prepared to offer significant reforms: reduced bureaucracy, more flexible trade agreements, greater autonomy for member species." "High Consul," Elena interrupted gently, "you're offering to become more like us. Why not simply join us instead?" The silence on Vextar's end spoke volumes. The question he couldn't answer was the same one facing the entire council. Why maintain a failing system when a superior alternative already existed? As the transmission ended, Elena looked out at the stars where human ships flew alongside vessels from 40 different species, all working together without the artificial constraints of the old order. The Council had taught humanity a valuable lesson about the difference between cooperation and control. Now it was time for that lesson to spread throughout the galaxy. 5 years after humanity's departure from the Stellar Council, the old order had collapsed entirely. What remained was a galaxy divided not by species or territory, but by philosophy. Those who embraced the human model of free cooperation versus those who clung to the failing remnants of centralized control. Admiral Marcus Reynolds stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, humanity's diplomatic headquarters, reading the final surrender documents transmitted from what had once been the Stellar Council's capital world. The last 12 member species had formally dissolved their organization that morning, with most requesting immediate admission to the human cooperative. "Sir," called Commander Patel from her workstation, "we're receiving a personal message from High Consul Vextar. He's asking for private asylum aboard one of our vessels." Marcus almost smiled. The same alien who had once accused humanity of dangerous ambition was now fleeing the consequences of his own rigid thinking. "Grant the request. Assign him quarters on the research vessel Endeavor. Maybe working with our xenobiology teams will give him a new perspective." The transformation had been more complete than anyone could have predicted. The human cooperative now included over 200 species, from tiny research collectives to massive interstellar nations. Trade flowed freely. Scientific discoveries spread instantly across the network. And conflicts were resolved through mediation, rather than political maneuvering. Dr. Sarah Kim, humanity's Director of Galactic Development, was reviewing the latest progress reports when her assistant announced an unexpected visitor. The doors to her office slid open to reveal Throck, the former elder of the Stoneheart Collective, but he looked dramatically different. His rocky exterior had been enhanced with crystalline growths that sparkled with inner light, a sign that his species had been experimenting with biotechnology shared through cooperative research programs. "Dr. Kim," Throck rumbled, his voice carrying none of the arrogance she remembered from council meetings, "I wanted to thank you personally for accepting our petition to join the cooperative." Sarah gestured for him to sit in one of the reinforced chairs designed for heavier species. "Elder Throck, your people's contributions to geological sciences have been invaluable. That new planetary formation theory is revolutionizing how we approach terraforming." Throck's crystalline enhancements pulsed with what Sarah had learned was embarrassment in his species. "I must confess something that weighs heavily on my conscience. When you humans left the council, I believed we were well rid of your disruptive influence. I thought your departure would restore stability and order. And instead, I watched as everything we had built crumbled within months. Our research programs stagnated. Our economy contracted. Our young people began emigrating to cooperative space in massive numbers. I began to understand that what we called disruption, you called progress. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. The council wasn't evil, Elder. It was just small. It thought in terms of maintaining the status quo, rather than improving it. When you limit growth to prevent problems, you also prevent solutions. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. A massive fleet had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Ships from dozens of different species, but flying under no banner anyone recognized. Admiral Reynolds was already mobilizing cooperative defense forces when the lead vessel transmitted an identification code that made him pause. It was the UES Magellan, flagship of humanity's deep space exploration fleet, returning from a 5-year mission beyond the galactic rim. Captain Elena Vasquez, the same diplomat who had walked away from the council years earlier, but who had since returned to her original career as an explorer, appeared on the main screen. Her hair was streaked with gray now, and her uniform bore the insignia of discoveries that had pushed the boundaries of known space. Admiral Reynolds, she reported with barely contained excitement, we've made contact with something unprecedented. The ancients aren't extinct. They've been waiting. The revelation sent shockwaves through the cooperative. The ancients were legendary. The first species to achieve faster-than-light travel, the builders of the hyperspace networks that made galactic civilization possible. They had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and technology that even modern science struggled to understand. They've been watching us, Elena continued, waiting to see if we would evolve beyond tribal thinking. The formation of the cooperative was apparently the sign they were looking for. Within hours, representatives from across cooperative space were gathering at New Geneva Station for what would become known as the Great Assembly. As delegates filled the massive amphitheater, a sense of historic importance hung in the air. The ancient representative was unlike anything they had expected. Rather than the exotic alien forms they were accustomed to, it appeared as a shifting pattern of energy and light that somehow conveyed intelligence and purpose. When it spoke, its words seemed to resonate directly in the minds of all present. Young species, it began, its voice carrying the weight of eons. You have achieved something, we thought, impossible. You have created unity without uniformity, cooperation without coercion, progress without destruction. Admiral Reynolds stepped forward as the appointed speaker for humanity. Ancient One, we are honored by your presence. What can we offer you? Nothing, came the surprising reply. But there is much we can offer you. The galaxy you know is but one of many. The universe is vast beyond your current comprehension, filled with wonders and challenges that require the kind of cooperation you have built. The ancient's form shifted, and suddenly, the air filled with holographic images of stellar engineering projects that dwarfed anything in known space. Civilizations that spanned entire galaxy clusters, and technologies that seemed to transcend physical law itself. We offer you membership in the Cosmic Assembly, a gathering of species from across the universe who have proven themselves capable of true cooperation. But know this: the invitation is not for humanity alone, but for the entire cooperative you have created. Elder Throck rose from his seat, his crystalline enhancements blazing with excitement. You mean all of us? Every species in the cooperative? Yes. You have demonstrated that diversity strengthens rather than weakens cooperation. That different perspectives lead to better solutions. That the whole can indeed be greater than the sum of its parts. Dr. Kim found herself thinking about the long journey that had led to this moment. What happened to the council species? The ones who chose isolation over cooperation. The ancients' form dimmed slightly. They chose stagnation. They will remain as they are until they choose differently. The universe does not punish. It simply provides opportunities for those ready to accept them. As the assembly ended and delegates returned to their homeworlds with news that would reshape galactic civilization once again, Elena Vasquez stood alone on the observation deck of New Geneva Station. The stars looked different now. Not as distant points of light, but as waypoints on a journey that was just beginning. Her personal communicator chimed with a message from Earth. It was from her granddaughter, a young diplomat who had been inspired by Elena's example to enter the service. Grandmother, the message read. The news broadcasts are saying this is the greatest day in human history. Is that how it feels? Elena smiled as she composed her reply. No, dear one. This is not the greatest day in human history. This is the first day of something much larger than human history. Today, we stopped being just another species and became part of something cosmic. As she sent the message, Elena reflected on the strange turn of events that had brought them here. Humanity's refusal to accept limitations had forced them to walk away from the Council. That act of independence had created something better than what they left behind. And now, that same willingness to choose growth over security was opening doors to wonders beyond imagination. The Stellar Council had tried to contain human potential and had lost everything in the process. But from that failure had grown something unprecedented. A truly cooperative civilization that had caught the attention of powers beyond galactic politics. Humanity had walked away from limitations and toward possibilities. The galaxy, and now the universe, would never be the same. In the end, the Council's greatest mistake had been their greatest gift to the cosmos. By forcing humanity to prove their worth independently, they had created the very unity they claimed to represent. And in learning to cooperate without coercion, the species of the galaxy had taken their first step toward joining something truly infinite. The stars were no longer the limit. They were just the beginning.